Hello, everyone, and welcome this afternoon to this briefing on literacy to leadership. I'm Deborah Kennedy, the Executive Director of the National Coalition for Literacy. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and welcome you to learn more about the power of adult literacy to transform the lives of people who participate in our adult education programs. The National Coalition for Literacy is an organization that brings together adult literacy organizations from around the country to work together on advocacy for adult education at every level, from basic skills all the way up through workforce preparation and life skills. And one of our major activities is to work with members of the House of Representatives through the House Adult Literacy Caucus. That caucus aims to bring federal level attention to adult education and family literacy, and to promote local, national, and global literacy initiatives. The caucus calls attention to the connections between adult literacy and national priorities, such as health, employment, and digital equity. The caucus was formed in 2010 under the leadership of Congressman Phil Rowe and Congressman Ruben Hinojosa, our dear friends, no longer in Congress, but still our dear friends. It is now led by Congressman John Yarmuth, who is the chairman of the House Budget Committee and a member of the House Committee on Education and Labor. And as I said, he is the chairman of the Adult Literacy Caucus. Our agenda for today, Todd, if you would give us the agenda slide, please. We'll have Congressman Yarmuth and Congressman Bobby Scott, who's also with us today, make short remarks about their interest and roles with adult education. And in addition, we'll have a little video from Senator Jack Reed, who's one of our best friends on the other side of the hill. Then we will have our four panelists, Kim Ford from Martha's Table, formerly from the Department of Education, Dr. Rachel DeVaughn and Carlos Vasquez, two people who have come through alternative adult education processes and are now giving back to the field and to the country in their roles. And we'll close with Holly-Ann Freso-Moore from Carlos Rosario International Charter School, who will talk about the ways that adults succeed and the wraparound services and other supports that enable them to succeed in adult education. We'll have a short Q&A session at the end. If you'd like to submit questions, please do that with the question feature on your Zoom. Please don't use raise your hand because I won't see it, but I will see if you have a question and put it in the questions. And you're also welcome to put links or comments in the chat box if you like, but please try to put your questions in the questions. And then we will close out with Marty Finsterbusch. Marty is the Executive Director of ValueUSA, and Value is the only national organization that is founded by, and run for adults who have come through alternative education systems. And so they're really the leaders in terms of demonstrating the power of adult education. Now I'm going to turn it over to Congressman Yarmuth, who's going to entertain us, as he always does, with his wit and wisdom. Congressman Yarmuth.
Well, thank you so much, Deborah. It's great to be with you, and thanks to all of you who are interested and involved in promoting adult literacy. It's a great honor to be also on the program with my Education and Labor Committee Chairman, Bobby Scott, who is as great a champion for adult literacy as you could possibly have. My interest in adult literacy, I came upon very honestly. Before I came to Congress, I was the editor and I wrote for a publication in my district in Louisville, Kentucky. And obviously, if people can't read what you write, then you're spinning your wheels and wasting your time. So I was always interested in adult literacy. And then secondly, I have the honor now of representing the home of the National Center for Families Learning. And I'm sure most of you, if you haven't met Sharon Darling, certainly know who she is. And she has been as strong an advocate as for any cause anywhere that I can imagine. And I was involved with her before I got to Congress and before I was in politics. And So we have a solid grounding in my district in pushing for adult literacy. You all know this is one of those preaching to the choir situations, and I'm not going to talk about all the data, the fact that there are more than 50 million American adults who are at low literacy levels, and just the disparity between Black and Hispanic Americans with white Americans as to literacy, and all the historic dynamics that have gone into this disparity. But suffice to say that we know that the future of the American economy depends on having people who can deal with increasingly sophisticated techniques and sophisticated businesses. And clearly that requires a sophisticated degree of literacy. But more importantly than that, in this world, you can't be a strong citizen, you can't be an informed citizen unless you're able to not just read things about the issues that affect your life, but also be able to analyze them and vet them to make sure that you understand exactly what people are saying and why. So for all sorts of reasons, adult literacy is a critical component, I think, to the fabric of our society. And I'm so proud to be the co-chair of the Adult Literacy Caucus. We need a co-chair, another co-chair, as Deborah said. Phil Rowe has retired from Congress. It was an honor to work with him. We'll find a new chairman, hopefully as good as Phil was, pretty soon, a new co-chairman, as soon as we can. But suffice to say that there is a significant component of this Congress, unusually bipartisan, that is committed to making sure the federal government do what it can to promote adult literacy among our citizens. So thank you for the work you do. Thanks for having me here today. And I look forward to listening to Chairman Scott and Senator Reid as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. And it is good to have you with us today. Now, Congressman Scott, you've got to follow that up. So you're next from Congressman Bobby Scott from Virginia, 3rd District.
Thank you, Deborah. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you, the National Coalition for Literacy, ValueUSA, and Pro-Literacy. And I want to thank you for everything you do to support adult learners and spread awareness about the need for adult literacy programs. I also want to recognize my colleague on the Education and Labor Committee. I also serve on the Budget Committee, so I want to recognize the Budget Committee Chair, John Yarmuth, for his leadership, not only in on budget issues and education issues, but specifically on his leadership on adult literacy and leading the caucus. As everyone here knows, access to literacy is a basic human right that is fundamental to our ability to succeed in life. Without some form of literacy, individuals miss out on so much, not only miss out on getting better jobs, but often important necessities like being able to pass a driver's license test. It's very difficult if you're not literate. Regrettably, far too many individuals far too few individuals are able to participate in federally funded adult literacy programs. Even before the pandemic, only about 1.5 million individuals participated in adult education and literacy programs, despite the fact that 43 million individuals could benefit from them. COVID-19 pandemic has not only exacerbated the already limited access to these programs, they've limited them at a time when they're needed most, because there's been significant job loss across the country, and people who've lost their jobs are going to have to find new jobs. So to date, none of the COVID-19 relief packages have included dedicated funding for adult education programs, including digital literacy. So simply put, hardworking Americans have been unable to find good paying jobs, particularly remote jobs, without access to effective adult literacy programs. And for years, I've worked to ensure that adult learners can gain the skills and education they need to find meaningful job opportunities. And with your support, we have another chance to make significant progress towards that goal in the coming months. In January, I led the reintroduction of the Relaunching America's Workforce Act, which would secure $15 billion in funding to strengthen our national workforce system, and it includes significant funding for adult education and literacy programs. The bill includes $1 billion to help adult education providers serve adults with low literacy levels who have been affected by the pandemic. But importantly, it includes dedicated funding to support adult education programs for incarcerated adult learners. I'm pleased that this legislation has been included in the American Job Plan, the Biden administration's recently released infrastructure proposal. The president's bold proposal calls on Congress to invest $100 billion in our nation's workforce programs, and including career services for adult learners, as well as adult literacy programs under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. In the coming weeks, we'll be working with the Biden administration to prioritize these critical investments, and I work forward to working with you as we take additional steps to support adult learners. And the committee, the Education and Labor Committee, will soon begin bipartisan discussions on the reauthorization of WIOA, and we expect that conversation to include adult education programs. So please continue to make your voices heard. And now more than ever, Congress must recognize the urgent need to help adult learners realize their full potential and contribute to our economic recovery. So thank you, Deborah, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much, Congressman. And as you get ready to start considering reauthorization of WIOA, please be aware that, you probably are aware, that we recently sent comments into the Senate Help Committee at their request, and we stand ready to send our comments to you as well. So thank you to both of our congressmen for participating with us today. Now we have Senator Jack Reed has sent us a little video that I think Todd is going to queue up next.
Hi, I'm Jack Reed. And I'd like to thank ValueUSA, the National Coalition for Literacy, and Pro-Literacy for organizing today's discussion with frontline students and educators on the power of adult education to transform lives and strengthen communities. We know that when we invest in adult education, we get results. We also know that we are only reaching a fraction of the number of individuals who could benefit from adult education programs. And we know that the pandemic and its economic fallout have only increased the need. Many adult education students live in the communities hardest hit by the pandemic, and many work in the hardest hit sectors of our economy. Without real opportunities to build foundational skills, their chances to advance economically will diminish. A real commitment to economic justice calls for a real commitment to expanding adult education opportunities. That is why I was proud to join Chair Murray in introducing the Relaunching America's Workforce Act, which calls for a $1 billion investment in adult education programs to rebuild our economy. I was proud to join forces with all of you and many of my Senate colleagues in calling for the administration to include this type of investment in the infrastructure plan and to work with us to put adult education on a path to doubling over the next 5 years. We need to keep making the case. Thank you for all you do to support adult learners. Thank you. Hi.
Thank you, Senator Reed. It's such a pleasure to be able to work with Senator Reed and the members of his staff. They have been, all of them, wonderful supporters of adult education over the years. Senator Reed and Senator Patty Murray have both been wonderful advocates and champions for adult education. Now we're going to move to our panelists, and our first panelist is Kim Ford, who is currently the CEO of Martha's Table. But before that, she was Deputy Assistant Secretary and Acting Assistant Secretary in the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education, known to us fondly as OCTAE. She provided leadership, direction, and management on over $2 billion in career and technical education, adult education, correctional and reentry education, and community college initiative. And so it's my pleasure to have Kim Ford with us to share her wisdom on the overall field of adult education and its successes. Kim.
Awesome. How's everybody doing? It's so good to see like friends. I see Sharon, I see Judy. It's just so great to be back amongst friends. Well, I'm with friends here too. I don't want to say I'm not at friends here at Martin's table. I'd like to thank the House Caucus on Adult Education and Literacy, certainly Deborah Kennedy for the kind invitation, the National Coalition for Literacy, ValueUSA, Pro-Literacy, and my fellow panelists with whom I share this time, Rachel, Carlos, Holly-Ann. It was so great to see Congressman Yarmuth and Scott and Senator Reed as well. So I'm going to just go ahead and jump in. Education is education is education. We tell children that they can grow up to be anything they want to be, and we support and we nurture those dreams, right? Okay. Education is interconnected. Again, we seem to understand this when we're dealing with children. This is why we have food programs in school, because we understand that if you're hungry, you are not the most active learner, right? And we fill schools, kids' schools, with the necessary resources such as computers, internet, and other high-tech learning materials because we want to see that be successful. All right. Education is a necessary tool for economic success, locally, nationally, and globally. You heard both Congressman and the Senator talk about that. We understand that, which is why every jurisdiction invests so heavily in education, not because we want people to be inquisitive and pontificate all day long. No, we do that because these are the necessary skills to contribute to the economy and be tax-paying citizens. We don't teach 3-year-olds here at Martha's Table, the great Martha's Table. We don't teach our 3-year-olds to read because it's a nice thing to do. We teach them to read because it's one of the foundational skills that are necessary to be able to obtain other skills so that they can tap into their talents and achieve their dreams. So now we get all of this. Education is education is education, right? 2, education is interconnected. And 3, education is a necessary tool for economic success. We get all of this until we put prefixes on education. Okay, when we say adult education, career and technical education, correctional reentry education, community college education, all of a sudden we start to negate the base of education for the prefix that's in front of it. So today we're here to talk about adult education. Why is it treated so vastly different than other education? Why do we seem to forget that adult education is education, that it's interconnected, and that it is a necessary tool for economic success? I could spend the balance of my time talking about why I think that's the case. After the age of 18, we expect individuals to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, or somehow we think we've already invested in their education. Well, we don't need to get into that. Instead of going down that bunny hole, I'd like to offer some thoughts in the buckets that I've offered. Education is education. All right, so Webster defines educate as to provide schooling for, to train by formal instruction and supervised practice, especially in a skill, trade, or profession, to develop mentally, morally, or aesthetically, especially by instruction, to persuade or condition to feel, believe, or act in a desired way. Note, the definition does not specify who, it doesn't specify what type, and it certainly doesn't say anything about age, right? So educate has nothing to do with age. Therefore, as a baseline, what it takes to teach someone how to read is what it takes somebody to read, right? So when we look at funding formulas, we should start with teaching somebody to read costs X. Then start from there as a foundation and add costs specific to what's required for success. When you look at the per pupil funding in DC, here in the District of Columbia, adult schools are funded significantly less than traditional comprehensive schools. Why? Because we don't even start from a true baseline. We don't start with anything in terms of equality, and we certainly aren't looking at things through an equity lens. We first say, this is adult education, and then build a baseline from there, but we've started lower than where we're saying other education starts for the exact same purpose, the exact same outcome. We want you to read, we want you to learn how to read. Why is it that we started from a different baseline? So not only is that not equal, but it's certainly not equitable. As a former proud dean of a community college, the DAS and acting assistant secretary of the Mighty Octane, hope we got some Mighty Octane folks on the line, and having served on a number of adult education school boards, I can tell you that adult education is more expensive. And quite frankly, part of why it's more expensive is because we refuse to accept the interconnectivity. Fund education as education and do not let prefixes make you start from a lesser place. We have to start with equality before we can even attempt to get to equity. So education is interconnected. As I mentioned earlier, we place all kinds of supports in traditional school settings because we know how important they are and that education is not a standalone product that will be successful without wraparound supports. But if you walk into a college, you get a student success specialist, a career services office, a health center with nurses that can help with your physical and mental health, and an entire network of opportunity that that institution has to offer. If you walk into an adult education provider, you might end up in a basement with no windows, okay? Here, we have this amazing adult education provider that has incredible results, but are fighting tooth and nail for space, for supports, for the same resources that are so freely given in other entities. Okay, all the while they're being held to the same and sometimes higher standards without the same level of investment. Interconnectivity is about funding and it's about policy. And until we're ready to fund adult education appropriately, and even when we do, because let me tell you, there are billions of dollars in education and 800 million in adult education, which is ridiculous. But until we're ready to do that, and even when we do, we have to look at policy decisions and their impact on education. In adult education, we need to focus on digital infrastructure, linkages to childcare, transportation, and release time for employers, from employers. We must look at policy through an equity and interconnectivity lens. We have these policies that are working against student success. We want to see success, right? And we want to see you to be not only active in the policies, but remember that if you're silent in the policies, that's also working against success. The last piece is education as a necessary tool for economic success. The infrastructure package, which has been mentioned several times, the American Jobs Plan, Representative Scott, the Workforce Plan, Senator Reed, the Workforce Plan. Shout out to COABE, Sharon, and others who've advocated in getting adult education included. You know, we have to have this. Why? Why is this a part of the plan? Why does everybody understand that? Because everyone knows that increases in skills results in better paying jobs, which results in more money back into the community. A high school credential results in over $1 million more in that individual's lifetime. That shows up in taxes, in retail spend, in dining out, in vacations, etc. And post-high school credentials actually go up from there. There's a clear benefit to everyone at every life stage embracing education. I'll close with this. At Martha's Table, we have partnerships with the Great Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School and Goodwill Excel Center Adult Public Charter School, and we leverage their academic expertise and couple it with our food services, our clothing services, our family supports. Families have the ability to even get into home buyers clubs. We even give direct cash transfers to our families. Why? Because we understand that education is education, that education is interconnected, and that education is a necessary tool for success. So we have to stop segmenting education. Let's drop the prefixes, invest in all education, write and support policies that promote success, because at the end of the day, it's all of our success. Adult ed for the win.
Thank you so much, Kim. That's great. Adult ed for the win. I'm totally on board with that. Really, totally on board with that. And Martha's Table is a wonderful entity. If you don't know anything about it, go look at marthastable.org and check it out. It's a great place. Thanks so much for being with us, Kim. We're going to move to our next speaker, who is Dr. Rachel DeVaughn. Dr. DeVaughn is one of my favorite people because she is a GED to PhD story, starting out, as she's going to tell you, with a lot of obstacles and coming through them, overcoming them, and succeeding and giving back now to adult education. So Rachel, take it away.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, I never should have gone after Kim. I had the incredible opportunity to meet you a couple years ago when you were with Octane, and I'm with Judy in the comment box, Kim for president. But anyway, that's another discussion. Absolutely, ditto to everything you said. Well, I just want to thank all of you, Senator Reed, Congressman Yarmuth and Scott, Value USA, Pro Literacy, and of course, National Coalition for Literacy, for allowing me this incredible opportunity just to share a small portion of my success story as an adult learner. Obviously, I dropped out many, many moons ago for some of the same reasons that other adult ed students drop out. And between the emotional and financial instability in my home life growing up, the lack of interest in education, being a first generation college student, none of those components were in place in my own life growing up. And so at that time, life was all about survival. When I dropped out, I never considered what that dropout would do, how it would negatively impact me moving forward in employment or in finding success in life. For me, the future was simply trying to survive the present. For many of our adult learners, it's the same scenario. They cannot focus on the future because the struggle is very real living in the today moment. So of course, after I dropped out, I had to work numerous low-skilled jobs to put food on the table. And years passed, and guess what? I found myself to be in the same dysfunctional cycle that I grew up in. I had not been given the tools or resources or the information on how to step out of that lifestyle and do something productive with my life. I remember one morning I woke up, I was in a very desperate place mentally, and I recognized that the only way I was going to improve who I was and where I was going was to finish my education and learn the skills I needed to learn to find better employment. So I was 28 years old, a single mom of 2 kids, living on 50-cent boxed macaroni and cheese, paying lots of daycare costs. Kim alluded to this, transportation problems, could barely pay my rent every month, working at a fast food establishment. But I ventured out, and that began my journey over the course of the next 17 years, going to school, working full-time, raising children, etc. I can testify to you that my own educational success would not have been possible had I not received wraparound support services. I am here to tell you they were crucial for me in being able to step outside what I knew in my little world and take that leap of faith to grow and learn the skills that were necessary. Not only did my instructors teach me how to become a student, they instructed me and taught me how to believe in myself. And I think for so many of our adult learners, that is lacking for many of them. There is constant negative experiences and challenges and barriers that put themselves there with those students. And it doesn't take much to bring them down. So my instructors enabled me to see my potential. They taught me how to face those fears and continue moving forward. My journey took me from being that high school dropout to receiving numerous awards in college as those years progressed. I was finally able, after those 17 years, to receive a PhD in higher education administration. I spent almost 20 years working in fast food. Tell that to your students. That's a long, hard job, low-skilled employment opportunity there. And when I finally was able to step away, I knew I wanted to go into a field where I was able to give back. So I went into the education field, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had something to bring to the table. I felt like I had something that would connect with other individuals. I had a little bit of a story where I could then encourage others. So as a teacher in a classroom, because I had overcome many of those academic challenges and barriers, because I'd come from many of the backgrounds that my own students lived in, there was a connection there. And I used those prior experiences in my own life to challenge my students. I was the best teacher I knew how to be. I put the time and effort in. I recognized that I had been given an incredible opportunity to finally succeed at something in my world, and it was imperative for me to give back. After I completed my PhD, I was then able to transition out of the classroom, and the Mississippi Community College Board picked me up, God love them all, because they gave me a chance. Had I at 17 ever thought that this high school dropout working in fast food would one day sit in the desk in the chair where I am now, I would have said they were crazy, but I'm here. And many opportunities have been granted to me, and I'm grateful for those. I'm very grateful for those. I know that now in my current role as Deputy Executive Director for Programs, it allows me opportunity to put policies in place, remove barriers, remove challenges, improve programmatic outcomes, revise our processes, and expand student pathways that align services and programs to meet the needs of our students here in Mississippi. Adult education allowed me a second chance. Those support services I received from the program provided me not only with the self-confidence and self-management skills I needed, but the discipline to succeed in the workplace. And I will forever be grateful for that. The leadership skills I've learned over the years motivated me to become an advocate for other adult learners in my community, working with our local prisons and our inmates, explaining and challenging them to continue moving forward, not to give up. The investment in adult education allowed me to become part of a positive change, not just in my own life, but I believe in the lives of our students. In order for them to be successful, we have to be vulnerable and share our own challenges and what we've overcome ourselves as former adult learners. So I'm honored to be at the table when all of these discussions are taking place. I also now serve with Deborah Kennedy with the National Coalition for Literacy, representing former adult learners. It's an honor to do so. I believe in the work that COABE is doing, that ValueUSA. I'm a member as a former adult learner. I appreciate the work that so many of our organizations and associations are doing in bringing awareness to the importance of adult ed and providing those much necessary resources for our learners. And so as we continue to have discussions and aligning and leveraging resources and comprehensive services, I find it a joy to be where I am today, and my hope is that this continues. So I thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Your story inspires me every time I hear it, maybe a little more every time I hear it. We do have a request in the chat for the video of your speech in particular to share with learners, so we will work on that. And I would like to take a quick pause here in our proceedings to call out a person who has just posted in the chat. Raynel Hernandez has put in a note that says, I work in adult ed in a community college. I received my GED, graduated with an associate's at the same community college, transferred to a four-year college, and now will graduate with bachelor's in science this May. Raynel, we would like to say congratulations on your graduation. You're only 4 weeks away. You can do it. We're proud of you. Our next speaker is going to pick up on Raynel's story, I think probably. Carlos Vasquez, originally from Honduras, and came to the United States in 2002 and has gone from GED or high school equivalency all the way up to teaching himself, and now is a high school equivalency instructor and also teaches a workforce curriculum for the State of New Mexico Roofing Association. So he's really focused on workplace and workforce skills. And his bio is really impressive. It says, his efforts have resulted in more than 2,500 students graduating with a high school diploma and 35 apprentices becoming licensed roofers. That's pretty powerful. Carlos, I'm looking forward to hearing your story.
Hello, everybody. Like you said, my name is Carlos Vasquez, and I think 15 years ago, I was asked you were from. I say I'm from Honduras. I think everybody in the world now know what is Honduras, right? So, well, first of all, I want to say thank you to this fine audience and give me the opportunity to speak and listen about the importance of literacy and leadership and adult ed. In my case today, I'm wearing two hats because, like Deborah said, I was adult learner, and now I am adult educator in New Mexico. A little bit of my background: I'm from Honduras, was born and raised and born in the countryside of Honduras, Tegucigalpa City, a rural area, and things over there have not been easy over there. But with the support and family and friends, I would say success was a little easier. At the age of 12 years old, I had to move to the city since in my hometown we didn't have a high school. So I got my high school, and then when I finished it, I registered at University of New Mexico, Honduras. In 1996, I got my bachelor degree in electrical engineering at National University of Honduras. And so that also made me one of the first generation in my family to get higher ed. I worked for several years in Honduras. On the other hand, due to hardship in my life and family, and I needed to leave my home country, so I left my home country, and, and for many reasons, and no difference for what is happening right now. Life, work, and few opportunities were limited, especially when the Honduran government made and still make ineffective practices, when sometimes I said medicine is more damaging than the disease. It was so difficult to leave my family. This choice was not a vacation trip. It was a journey, a necessity, and I had many dreams back then with huge ambiguity in my head. I didn't know what's going to happen, but I never regret of that decision. Anyway, I am immigrant. I am a transplanted in USA, and every time I look back, it's just a reflection how far I have walked, but also helped me, to see with more clarity my future. I believe the power of survivals helped me to move forward, but this is not a normal rule. I know many adults like me who are immigrant, or also adults who live and were born here in the United States, is still struggling to succeed. As a matter of fact, as an adult learner, I graduated with my GED diploma in 2003 in Catholic Charities Education Department here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Meanwhile, I continue working, as in the electrical field in New Mexico. Also volunteering for a program called HEP, and which help immigrants who work in agriculture and to get the high school diploma. So I was a volunteer over there back then. I always have done volunteer work. So in 2005, I had to go back to Honduras. So I kept doing my educational work, and also I created a nonprofit organization with a group of friends right here from New Mexico, and we call the institution Teaching for a Better Tomorrow. Meanwhile, I got my second bachelor degree as industrial engineer. Well, this is very important because for me, being a volunteer changed my trajectory of my career. I returned to New Mexico in 2008, but in 2009, I applied for adult education position in Albuquerque. This was a very shocking moment in my life because when I got in my interview, the person who was interviewing me was my former teacher when I got my GED. I taught GED in computer science in different institutions such as University of New Mexico, Southwest Creation, Encuentro, all organizations who are here located in Albuquerque. And right now I'm currently teaching as an adult educator in Catholic Charities, teaching high school equivalency. Like Deborah mentioned, also I am working with workforce curriculum for the state of New Mexico Roofing Association. And I have, I would say, graduated many students, which I feel so proud for my students and myself. After all, I made myself this question: what we can do? Well, number one, I take a pledge, help and raise adult literacy rates, encourage family and friends to do the same. Help adults and families literacy in many ways. Number two, I become an adult literacy advocate. Today, I am sending a message, an action alert to our legislators to create opportunities and special events that impact adult literacy awareness. And much funding for national and local levels of adult education programs. As an immigrant, I had too many difficulties and all barriers to overcome. But my experience has made me an instructor that I can strongly relate to my students. I always share my story to encourage success through education to inspire other students. My philosophy is, everybody should have access to education, but at some communities, the education opportunities are minimum. Right now, we have in this pandemic many areas where a student doesn't have internet. They have to go to public places, to Starbucks or a McDonald's to sit with a laptop and get to do the homework. I'm committed to serving these people who have been denied good education. For the most part, they are grateful for the opportunity to learn that we want to take advantage. As a teacher, I share the best of my knowledge in the classroom. And I do this with passion, tenacity. I believe the intrigue about the world is the engine to fuel curiosity. I promote analysis, reflection to get confidence and critical thinking skills. I also like to stress my students, and sometimes we have to teach math with rigor, but love, but I call also algebra without pain. My students laugh because I always try to make math class very easy, friendly, and always fun. What the Congress can do? Well, we here in the United States, we have more than 30 million adults who are struggling with reading, basic reading, math skill. Those individuals struggling to read a menu, fill a job application, or read story at the bedtime to their children. Adult literacy is a factor in almost every economic issue, including parenting, healthcare, workforce, education, adult, intergenerational literacy, poverty, by giving adults skills they need to succeed as workers and parents. Adult education, they mentioned before, affect the economy, so adults with a high school diploma are more than twice likely to be unemployed, working low wage, live in poverty, and rely on the government aid programs than those with higher levels of education. Also, the government also, have to know the adult education impact literacy and the children's. Research showed that you will not solve the academic achievement gap by educating the children without addressing their parents' need for basic education and training. So we have to support our adults, to impact our children. So having said that, together we can break that traditional schoolings. We are not living in the past. We have this pandemic have taught many things to us. We can evolve the equation in education and make more effective research and best practices. Together, as adult education and training affect the economy. At the end, I'm going to end with this. Business economic growth, it's specific. We need, employers with skills to supply the skilled labor. So one thing I'm going to mention, I'm going to make a parenthesis. I came from Honduras with engineering degree, but being here in the United States, when I came, it meant nothing. So I felt like I was without tools, not speaking English, learning a new language, learning the network in the United States, learning new policies. Where is the fire department station policy? How to fill application in English? So I had to educate myself. Took me 9 years to understand, the power of education as an adult. So I graduated with GED. I finished my bachelor, and also I had to teach my students, a better way and a path, how they can succeed, Thank you so much for your time.
Carlos, you're fantastic. You're really you're amazing. You're an amazing person. I can't imagine getting an engineering degree and then getting another one in a language that isn't my first language. So, and then giving back as much as you have given back. So thank you for sharing your story with us today. It's a real pleasure to have you with us. Now we're going to turn to our fourth panelist, Holly Ann Freso-Moore. She's the principal of the Carlos Rosario Charter School, the Harvard Street campus here in Washington, D.C. And she really has a powerful message about how wraparound services and all of the services that our programs provide enable our learners to succeed. So Holly Ann, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. And I am just quaking in my shoes following up after all of these wonderful panelists. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the amazing adult learners here in Washington, D.C. and the inspiring educators as well. I also want to thank NCL, Value Village, Martha's Table. We work with y'all too, and all of my colleagues on this panel. It's good to see you, Kim. My name is Holly Ann Freso-Moore, as we said, and I'm the principal of the Harvard Street campus of Carlos Rosario, which is backdropped behind me here. This is my 7th year as principal, but I began at our school in 2001 and spent so much of my time in the classroom with students, which was absolutely my favorite place to be. I've dedicated my entire career to serving adult students. And like so many of us, I think a hallmark of adult educators is that we're lifelong learners. So I'll be graduating in May with my doctorate as well in educational and organizational leadership. And my dissertation focuses on the central importance, and Rachel and Carlos, you both touched on this, of that teacher-student relationship and the programmatic supports that affect adult learning persistence. In 1998, the Carlos Rosario Public Charter School became the first adult charter school in the entire nation. Today, our school serves 2,500 students annually across our 2 campuses. Our students range in age from 60 to 80 years old, but the majority of our students fall between the ages of 25 and 45. Our students come from 80 countries and speak more than 30 languages. And in addition to improving their English language skills, our students earn their high school diplomas, develop digital literacy skills, prepare to become naturalized citizens, and enter into our workforce development programs in culinary arts, nurse aid training, bilingual teaching assistant training, and IT fundamentals. If there was ever a question about the importance of adult education and why it matters, I think the COVID pandemic would be the answer to that. DC's adult charter schools serve the communities that have been most impacted by the devastating effects of this pandemic. Our students are the frontline workers in healthcare and food services and often have to live in very close quarters due to the high lack digital access. The impact of COVID-19 on individuals without a high school diploma here in Washington, DC has been staggering. In April of 2020, the unemployment rate for those 25 years or older without a high school diploma was 21%, as opposed to those with a high school diploma at 17%. And for those with a college degree, it was 8%. So you can see right there what it means to have basic literacy of a high school diploma. I think much of the country understands the impact this pandemic has had on the K-12 school system, and I think even on colleges to some extent, but adult education has been largely absent from the national conversations about resource allocation. And I also think that the significant role that our programs and our schools have played so far in keeping our communities safe have not been adequately acknowledged or highlighted. Comprehensive student services are the hallmark of a quality adult education program, and they are expensive, as Kim reminded us, but they are necessary, as Rachel also touched on, and Carlos as well. Our student services department at Carlos Rosario really keeps its finger on the pulse of the well-being of the whole student. And they help our students, and not just our students, but by extension, their families and our community members, to navigate and access local resources. Because we have already so many relationships developed with our network of providers, we were best positioned to leverage these resources efficiently and effectively during this crisis. For the past year, my school has seen an increase of about 30% in students seeking assistance from the Student Services Department, and that's despite being at distance. The support has been around affordable housing, employment assistance, as well as unemployment benefit assistance, food insecurity, and healthcare. Those have been among the most requested services. Because of the relationships we develop with our learners, we're considered a trusted source of information and a vital resource to them. Besides the individual student needs, the department also proactively accesses partnerships that we have with organizations and agencies to bring into the school vital information directly to them. Examples of these kinds of partnerships are initiatives like police workshops virtually, parent town halls for ELL parents who are having trouble understanding what is going on right now in education, virtual consultations to support students in applying for citizenship. And we have an upcoming vaccine town hall where we'll be featuring some of the Department of Health personnel to really give clear, consistent, important, and accurate information. Each of these initiatives were designed as a specific response to the patterns of request that the department sees from individual students. For a real concrete example, I think we've all read about the increased threat of abuse for domestic violence victims during lockdown. And our programs see those trends up close before you start reading about them in the paper. And they're able to respond with tangible supports like a police workshop where students are able to seek help and speak with police officers in their native language. Adult learners in our programs know that these life-saving resources are just a phone call away. And this protects our adults, and it also protects our children. Touching back on this idea that Carlos started with, adult education programs are helping to narrow the achievement gap for children. That's the argument, right? The interconnectivity Kim was talking about. Adult education charter schools are directly connected to families caught in that widening divide. Approximately 50% of DC's adult learners are parents of school-age children, and 90% of them live below the poverty line. Opportunity gaps begin for children as early as preschool, but as parents improve their educational levels, children's academic achievement improves as well. And research also tells us that when mothers complete additional education, their children show improved language and reading skills as well as academic achievement. Our programs directly prepare adult learners to support their children in this new educational landscape, from navigating online learning platforms and building learning routines at home to accessing essential resources in this virtual environment. And our partnerships with DCPS's K-12 schools, that network has just grown considerably over the last year and ensures that critical information is reaching our city's families, who are often positioned furthest from the tables where these decisions are being made. An investment in adults has a measurable return. That's always the question. What's the return on investment? What's the return on investment? Because education is not enough when it comes to adults, right, Kim? After earning their high school diplomas, an adult can typically earn about $10,000 more per year. This means that for every 400 adults who earn their high school diploma, the United States earns about $2.5 billion back in tax revenues and reduced expenses. So there's your return on investment. Adult education graduates are our country's workforce. They are the assistant teachers in your child's classroom. They are the restaurant owners and managers in your favorite restaurants. They are the nurse aides standing by the bedsides in hospitals where COVID patients are dying. By amplifying the impact of adult education in our nation and providing vital support to our organizations, our country will emerge from this crisis better and stronger than before. So thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little bit about the critical role that each of us is playing in what sometimes feels like an invisible role of adult education in supporting our most disadvantaged communities.
Thank you, Holly Ann. That's so powerful, and especially what you're saying about the role of parents in promoting their children's education and then lifting themselves up. That's such an important point that our programs make possible. You give me hope that perhaps we really will come out of this pandemic, first of all, and that we will come out of it stronger and better, and maybe with greater awareness across the country of the importance of adult education. That's what I would really hope for. We're going to move now, because our time is short. I'm going to postpone the Q&A responses and go straight to Marty Finsterbusch, our final speaker, who's going to close us up. Marty is, as you, I think, all know, the Executive Director of ValueUSA, and I would like to now turn over to Marty.
Hi, thank you. Deborah, I want to thank you for leading us through this discussion. I wish we had a lot more time to get into the answers and questions, but we're really running out of time. I do want to thank the members of Congress who came here today earlier. They are champions, but guess what? We need more champions in Congress. A lot of things are coming up, like the Reauthorization Workforce Investment Act is coming up, but it's not just that. As you heard from our panelists, adult literacy is not in a vacuum. It also affects healthcare, transportation, housing, all that, and job trainings. All that is wrapped in adult literacy. So legislators, staffers that are on here and others, think out of the box where adult literacy fits in and help fund adult literacy in other pieces of legislation, because it has direct impact on the adult learners. As you can see, literacy and learning how to read is not in a little tiny vacuum in a little corner. It's a whole life of a person. And so we need more champions in Washington, D.C., and make that connection that literacy is the baseline for education for our country and so forth. I'd like to thank the panels for being here. You are leaders. You are moving our field forward. You're helping educate not just the students, but your own peers, our nation, what needs to happen. And so I'm honored that you are here with us today and you are making a difference in so many other people's lives. ValueUSA, as you heard, is one of the only organizations in the United States run by the students. And we feel that the voice of adult learners must be heard in this field to improve adult education. And I'm speaking that from my own experience because I am an adult learner. I have a severe learning disability and I went into a literacy program and they helped me bring up my reading levels. And now here I am running a national nonprofit organization making impact in our field and in this country. And so we, the adult learners, can make a difference. One of the things that we need to get doing is more programs need to hire more adult learners in our own field. Why aren't students more teachers? Why is there more not former students from our program administration? Why are we not on the boards of other national organizations? Other people are running this field, but not the people that are in it. So when you talk about legislations, we need to start building in there that the adult learner's voice needs to be part of state plans, part of local groups. It's not happening. Others are saying what needs to be done, but the people that are most affected are like, take it or leave it. And maybe that's why we have a really high dropout rate in our field, because the system's not being created with the adult learners. It's being created for the adult learners, take it or leave it. And so these are things I would like to share with you to think about. And then the last is, I want to thank all the participants who have come this hour onto this to learn and listen from this panels. We have over 300 people today on this webinar, and I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. So have a great day, and again, thank you.
Marty, thanks so much, and thanks to you all for being with us. We're going to stay on the line for just a couple of minutes to take a really interesting question, actually a couple of interesting questions that came up in the Q&A. And the first one is actually something that all of our speakers addressed in one way or another. This question came in, Kim, while you were speaking, but I think everyone has addressed it. And so the question is this: literacy needs to be more than about workforce development. It needs to be about preparing individuals to participate in a democracy. As Paulo Freire has said, literacy is more than reading the word. It needs to be about reading the world. I can't possibly agree more with that statement, but I would be very happy, Kim, if you have something you'd like to say about that, Rachel, Carlos, or Holly Ann, any of you who would like to respond to that.
Sure. I mean, I couldn't agree more as well. I mean, it's like in early childhood education, we talk about, you know, the time where you go from learning to read to reading to learn. And like the point is, again, it's a foundational skill that opens the whole world up to you for, again, as was mentioned, the citizenship, just the exposure, the ability to, you know, to participate in everything in a really real way. And I do think that we did, and it's funny, my background is in workforce development, but, you know, I do think that sometimes we get so singularly focused on the labor side that we miss, again, that this is a foundational skill that literally opens up everything.
Thank you. Thank you. Rachel, do you want to say something? Holly Ann, go ahead. Go ahead, Holly.
Seconds. I didn't see you unmute, Rachel, forgive me. I would just piggyback on that what's most foundational in reading and learning to read and developing comprehension is a background knowledge and understanding. And that's what makes so critical that students understand not just how to read, but where they are positioned in society and how they show up in the society. And that they can read more than just what's on the page, but they can read the systemic inequities that exist around us in this world. And that's going to be part of building that system, as Marty said, not just taking it or leaving it as it's been given to us, but really reimagining and thinking again. If you told us just last year that education would be turned on its head, we would say no way. And yet, when we were presented with this opportunity, each and every one of us said, well, we have no choice, we have to do it. And we need that kind of imaginative creativity to really reimagine the ways that we're teaching our adults.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rachel.
I echo what Holly Ann and Kim both stated. And, you know, when I think about reading, I think about it opens that new world. You know, we hear a lot about workforce development and critical thinking skills and being able to function in the workforce. But reading and literacy is so much more than that. It allows a person ownership in their surroundings. It allows them the freedom to infer what's going on and to use prior learning experience in making those decisions. And so it is not just the workforce development components. Absolutely, we want our students employed at a family sustaining wage and to be able to break through those cycles of poverty. But it's so much more than that. Knowledge is power. And when you can pick up that book and read and comprehend and synthesize that information that you're processing, the world's yours. I mean, there's no stopping someone.
Yeah. I agree. Carlos, did you want to chime in on this?
Well, I'm just gonna share a little example, you know, how adult education is being impacted in many ways. I have the experience to teach all kinds of students, you know, from different countries who get out from correction, students who drop school, you know, all kinds of people. But there is a common denominator, you know, why students drop out also classes from adult ed. So we have to create, you know, a way to make sure the adult learners, right, don't miss the opportunity to complete the high school. So it is a link over there, very powerful, we need to find, you know, to help these people. Because yesterday, when a student told me, teacher, sorry, I need to drop the class because I have to work. You know, I have this opportunity. I wasn't working for 6 months. Now I got a job. So how we can help those students to hold it? We have to create avenues to make, you know, these people to succeed in this world. Because as much there are opportunities, the same way we have barriers. But I told my student, we have to take those, you know, barrier as an opportunity, you know, and never give up. And I always tell my students, you never give up and let's keep working together. So I always find ways to make a flex time with my students because I am one of them.
Perfect. That's perfect. Couldn't be better. Thank you so much. We do have another question that I'd like all of you to think about your response for this. We know that funding for adult education is important and welcomed, but what policies not specific to adult education would help adult students most? Now, I have a feeling that Kim Ford can answer that question. But I'll open it up to all of our speakers.
So what there really, I don't know that we could find a policy that in some way doesn't tie to education, right? So there's that. The more direct ones, and I think folks have really talked about this, and I also try to take Judy's as well, with reauths of Title II or WIO in general. But we have got to look at, and many people mentioned this on the panel, 2-gen, like we have to be extremely intentional with 2-gen, multi-generational models. Let's just say that. They don't have to just be custodial parent, child, like multi-generational kind of household models really have got to be a part of this, because when you do it, when you look at it that way, you'll start to address by default the child care issues, and you'll probably link into the transportation issues. I also just believe that fundamentally through WIO or other policy measures, we have got to fund more earn and learn models such that, because we understand that the populations we're talking about have to make a decision. Do I work or do I go to school? It needs to be and. If I can work and go to school, the likelihood that I can actually get to a family sustaining wage is that much higher. And so most people, of course, talk about that in terms of apprenticeships, but there are a number of different earn and learn models that are out there. And I just think that we have to just really double down on the multi-generational intentionality that, again, will grab healthcare and it'll grab childcare and transportation. And I think that we really have to be very, very intentional around earn and learn models such that folks can stop swirling at the bottom and get up into the stick rate and again, the family sustaining wage.
Yeah. Anybody else want to say something about that?
Can I take a teeny tiny stab?
Sure.
I completely concur with everything that Kim just said. I was also going to mention that age 3 childcare, age 3 school across the country, having somewhere for kids to go to school sooner, that would support. As you look to reauthorize WIOA, thinking outside of the box into ways to leverage the creativity that we've used in virtual distance learning, hybrid models, so that we are asking our students, a very quick story, we were able to, through grants, through SOAR grants in Washington, D.C., to give all of our learners laptops so that they could continue to study even though we were not in our buildings, and that's been happening across the country. We did that thinking, oh my goodness, what is this going to mean? And with a lot of hard work and a lot of tech skill development, I have students that have been telling us, well, wow, I'm a nurse aide trainer at this hospital down here, Washington Hospital Center. And on my break, what I do is I just take my computer to the break room. I make sure that my buddy knows that I'm going to be out for an hour and I can sit in an hour of class. We have students that are on their phones attending class while they're at work. We have made it so that students can access their education and not, as Kim said, say either or, but say both and. And if we can leverage that to continue to allow our students to do both together, I think it's a win-win for everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Holly-Ann. And I think our final question that we're going to address today, actually, Holly-Ann, is probably addressed mostly to you. It says, I have heard repeatedly that wraparound services are essential to facilitating success for so many adult learners. How do you go about establishing programs that include these services as the gold standard for programs across the nation? How do you advocate for funding such programs when you are essentially drawing from so many different funding channels, education, workforce, SNAP, etc.? Now, I know that the answer that you're going to give has to do with being a charter school and the way charter school structures work in the District of Columbia, but I'll let you actually answer the question.
That is going to be the case, but even though our school became a charter in 1998, the organization actually was started in 1970 as a small community-based organization. And student services have always been a central component of the Carlos Rosario model. And it's not cheap, it's expensive, but if it means having 3 people dedicated, and I mean, to be honest, at the Harvard Street campus, we have a team of 12 that serve 1,500 students, right? So you're not talking about a high level of a large number of folks, but it's centrally important because when students need help, they need it now. And there are so many times that we have referred students to go to outside organizations. And then when we follow up with them and say, did you go? No. Or did you go? Yes, but they told me they couldn't help me. So if we're just sending students without any of that back follow-up, this is the reason why our students are leaving and exiting. When they need that support, they need it right now. So if that could be also wrapped into that question that we talked about earlier about what can we do to make sure that our students persist, that's going to be a big one. And hopefully WIO funding will reconsider that as part of the model that they want to see in quality programs.
Also, like super specific, but like the blending of funds needs to happen, right? So WIO has tried to do that with CTE, but even when you mentioned all these other pull downs, you have to deal with SNAP, ENT one way. You have to deal with WIO with Title I this way, Title II, III. Like when I was at Ed, we did PPP, public-private partnerships, and we put in some waivers. It was very difficult for jurisdictions to even use the fact that you could waive out of certain things. But as a system, we've got to stop thinking of people having issues that are department centered, right? I don't have a Department of Education issue, okay? I have a Chem issue that is going to require the Department of Ed, Ag, Labor, and Justice, right? Like we've really got to keep forcing the system to think more holistically as people and communities. So I just think that would be really, really helpful to understand, again, the interconnectivity, because that's how you start getting all those segmentations.
Yeah, I agree. And something that Carlos in particular mentioned earlier, the specific issue of digital access and digital literacy, which has become so huge over the past slightly more than a year now. We have a story coming from Wyoming that actually, in the pandemic context, they've actually been able to reach more adults because they've shifted to online instruction. And in Wyoming, where the population is quite spread out, they don't have public transportation. So the fact that there's no transportation access means that online access is really critical, and they have actually been able to reach more people. So putting all of those kinds of connections together is really the way to go, and I agree.
Thank you.
On this issue from the adult learner perspective, and that is the system is still fragmented for the adult learner. It still depends on what door you walk into is what service you get. Mm-hmm. Even though there might be still another better program perfect for you down the street, it's still not happening for the adult learner that's someone telling them about it. We've gotten better. WIOA has definitely helped, but the system is still fragmented. And with the next wave of funding, you're asking us, the students, again, to navigate at a fragmented system. And it's not fair to us. And so as we move forward, this is a critical piece for the adult learners. And I need to hem that in for everyone who's listening to this. We need better connectivity, if you want to say that. So we, the adult learners, don't have to keep on banging our heads and going to 5 different programs to try to find the right one.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hit out home for that, since you brought that up.
Right on, Marty. Keep making that point. I think we're at the end of our questions, and we've taken our speakers an extra 15 minutes over their time. Thank you all for your participation today. Thank you to everyone who attended for being here and for your comments in the chat. We really appreciate those, and we'll be reviewing those. So it's been a pleasure. Have a good rest of the afternoon. And as Kim says, education for the win.